All right, we're live.
All right. So this week we were reading the case study on Lance Armstrong and integrity issues, it seems like. Um, so some of the questions are, well, I guess in the case study we'll summarize real quick. It just kind of summarized all of the shortfalls and all of the history and all of the people that assisted Lance Armstrong in his doping and cheating um, throughout his career. It was kind of surprising. I didn't realize how many people helped him and how many people knew that he was doing that. So I kind of was like, oh, eye opener for me because I didn't follow any of that thread when it was going on. So it was pretty interesting. So.
Yep.
So it says, what is Armstrong's legacy? What do you feel like he has left behind?
So I'll take a crack at that first. I don't know how he cannot be remembered for anything more than a cheater, because everything he worked for, everything he did, and especially with all the denials that he did, and knowing there were so many people orchestrating it, I don't know how his legacy can't be the doping scandal versus the guy who won 7 straight Tour de France's. I mean, he's got to be known for the rest of his life as he was the guy who cheated and denied it to a level beyond what anybody probably even thought someone would do. I don't see how it's anything different than that.
Okay. Brett, how about you? What's his legacy?
Well, I seem to disagree a little bit.
That's fine.
um, you know, I know he got caught up in a whirlwind, and he did a lot of things wrong. And there was a lot of people that knew he was doing things wrong, and a lot of people that didn't stop him. But that doesn't justify what he did. But I think by starting his Live Strong Foundation, he was able to give hope, although some might argue that it was artificial hope, but it did give those people hope. And there was millions of dollars that went to a good cause. Although I wrote in my online that it was filthy money that was used, but still it did good. And then, I think of his legacy. I think that he's a father and he's a husband and he's a brother and he's a child of somebody. And we all make mistakes in our life at one point or another. And so I don't think we can hang on for the rest of our lives thinking that he was a cheat and what he did was wrong, because I think the guy was eventually remorseful for what he did and felt bad about it and came forward, and although he confessed to, was it Oprah or someone,
Okay.
rather than maybe in a different avenue. But um, I mean, I don't look at him as a different guy. I mean, he cheated, he got caught, he's remorseful, and he's probably leading a pretty good life right now as a different individual. So it is what it is.
Mhm. I think I kind of agree with you both, but I do think that, his legacy is that he cheated and lied. When you say his name, that's kind of what people equate him with. Um, I also think that he was a powerful athlete and got caught up in, what is probably really common in their field. From reading the case study, it looks like it was pretty common to be a cheater, which is a funny thing. I was looking at the games at the store for Christmas, and Monopoly now has a Monopoly for Cheaters game. So all the cheaters can get together and play Monopoly together. And does that make it right and fair? If they're all doing it, like he said, if they were all leveling the playing field per se, I don't know. I think that he got caught in a very young age. Even, and I think it started when he lied to be able to compete about his age. So I think a lot of excuses were made because he was so talented, and it just snowballed into this madness that was completely out of control. So, with all of the people helping him. Um, so that kind of leads into the next question of who suffered from his cheating and what were the costs?
I think everyone associated with him suffered from his cheating, but I think the sport suffered probably the most. The Tour de France, the event, the people who volunteered. I think it just trickled down to everyone in that community and in the biking community. Um, his family suffered, he suffered, his parent, everyone suffered from it. The
Yeah,
doctors.
you kind of lose credibility across the board, like you said, from the not just him, but all the people who participated. It kind of ruins the credibility of the sport in general, that you don't necessarily have a true champion, because if everybody wasn't cheating, you wouldn't, who knows who would actually be the top cycler. And just going back for a second, back to the first question, sort of the disagreement of that, what it actually made me think of, because I think you made some great points. And it made me think, like, is it possible for someone to have, we talk about a legacy, but is it possible that that's all context related? Because if you talk about Lance Armstrong in the context of cycling, it probably is a very negative connotation. If you talk about Lance Armstrong as it relates to the work and fundraising he did as it relates to cancer research, that's a very positive legacy. And so if I put that on myself and I go, my work is going to mirror me obviously very different than my family and friends, because I probably should be striving to be this same person all the time. But, the sad reality is that time of work knows me as this taskmaster, and I've got to drive a vision, and we've got to realize that vision. And it's on me to make sure we're all working towards that. Whereas at home, I want to be known as this husband and father. And so I guess it's possible to have sort of different legacies depending on the context of, we have so many different things going on in life.
Good point, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah, and I agree. The costs were high with what he was doing and everybody that was helping him cheat. And it was surprising that nobody else blew the whistles before some of the people that actually did, the few that were close in his circle that then got kicked out of his circle, and then they blew the whistle, instead of, at some point someone in the inner circle going, yeah, I mean, this isn't right. And with all the speculation and all the accusations that were made, and then the slandering that he did in response to those, I'm just surprised it took so long. So I think the costs were high for the sport, the fans, and obviously everyone involved, but I think it was a really bad situation. So it kind of talks about some of the other riders, Hamilton and Landis, when they testified, and were they loyal or not loyal enough to Armstrong?
Well, I don't know that you should be loyal to the point of following someone down the path of, to the extent that they did, with all the doping and everything they were doing. I kind of saw this question and went, I don't know that you should be loyal necessarily to specific people. So to say, are you loyal to Lance Armstrong seems odd to me. And instead it should be, are you loyal to your values and to the truth? And, there are things you should be striving for and things that you're trying to make yourself successful with. That's what you should be loyal to, not to, I don't know why they would attach themselves to, I mean, they must have thought at some point they're going to get some level of success being attached to Lance Armstrong. And then at some point when he was going down, they turned on that. But again, that goes back to, don't be loyal to a specific person necessarily, but to your own ideals.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they saw Lance Armstrong going down, and they thought, we need to remove ourselves from this situation, and that's when they flipped. When they left, if you will, their loyalty and jumped on the other side. And I think they were just trying to clear their names from the whole scandal. Myself, that's kind of what I thought.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, I think I kind of read that they continue to dope themselves and compete themselves. So it really wasn't anything really to do with Armstrong. I think they just felt, the heat's getting on, and it wasn't till Armstrong actually accused Hamilton of doping and put up a little pressure on him and his group first. So I thought that was kind of funny too. I was like, but neither one of them, I mean, I think Landis probably was a little bit more aware, but I don't think Hamilton was aware of his loss of integrity, really, because he continued to dope and he continued do exactly what Lance Armstrong was doing. Landis seemed to be a little bit more sorrowful, when he got caught. I guess he actually was more reflective on how much that hurts the sport and the team. I don't think Hamilton really cared until he went down. So, yeah. But I don't think they were. I think they were loyal to Armstrong, and I don't think. I think that they weren't loyal when they saw it was going down. So, which is not the right thing to do, and it kind of leads into the next question of, were you ever witnessed a leader, or formal or informal, make a decision for others that made you uncomfortable? What was the situation and how did you feel about it? So now I think we just share our own examples of where we've seen leaders make poor decisions and make people feel uncomfortable, and what was the environment. Does anybody have a situation like that?
I do. Sure. So I've shared a lot in our group meetings about the transformation my company is going through and the change in leadership. And I immediately thought of this when I saw this question, where we were in a really bad situation with the previous CEO, in that we weren't exactly aligned on our vision as a company and who we were going after and targeting to sell to. And we would basically, the directive was say whatever it takes to close a deal. And we had people lying through their teeth and going into industries that we were not good at. And we had sold a specific, we had sold a client in the healthcare industry. And there was a lot of things that we did not do well from a software perspective. And we knew there was going to be a ton of work to get us where we needed to be. And our timelines did not align with that client at all. So it was put on me and my boss at the time to come up with a plan of how we were going to deliver all this functionality. And we knew, based on the size of our teams, we put together a Gantt chart that showed, here's all these things that have to be done, or a project plan. And, based on the resources we have, this is probably going to take at least 9 months to a year. And they wanted everything in 3 months. And we reported that back to our CEO to say, we either need to look at our level of staffing, or, but the reality is we can't deliver what we need to deliver here. And we probably shouldn't have gotten into this deal to begin with, because it wasn't even a big deal. We were only making like 80 grand, where most of our clients are, $500,000 to $1 million clients. And we were getting 80 grand to do a year's worth of work, which was it didn't make sense. Our CEO took that spreadsheet when we were all on a plane together, when we showed it to her, and she literally took it, typed over it, and dragged everything in and said, here, we're going to show this to him, where I've now made it look like you're going to deliver this in 3 months. And we just sat there going, you got to be kidding. Like, one, there's no way we're going to do it. And her thing was, that's what they want to hear. So we don't want to lose them. So figure it out. And we were all just like, you're not living in reality. And I'm not going to sit in front of a client and tell them we're going to do something that I know, at least in the way we're constructed today, there's just no way we're going to do what you're saying we're going to do. To the point where this goes back to where I was probably on the chopping block where I work now. And since we got purchased and they came in and removed that CEO, and, I'm much more looked upon favorably. But that to me was an example where we had a leader who specifically put us in a position to go, tell them you're going to deliver things that we all know you can't deliver, but just say it because we need their 80 grand. And that's what I want you to do. So that's my story.
I don't have a personal experience that I would share, but when I read that question, there was a thought that came to my mind, and I think it was Bank of America. Not too long ago, they were opening new accounts in individuals' names just to meet their quotas and to meet their goals. And wasn't it Bank of America?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys remember seeing something about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so I thought, there must be incredible pressures from upper management down on these tellers, bank loan people, to really drive results, and the pressure that it puts on them just make their working conditions miserable.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I think that was Wells Fargo, right?
Was it Wells Fargo? I can't remember. I think it was one of those big banks, and what went on with them.
Yep. And they were opening up fake accounts, and
transferring money without the owners knowing to open up those accounts and other things. Yeah.
Yeah. How about a situation where you witnessed a talented followers follow a leader into an uncomfortable or bad zone? What was the situation? What were the results? And did anyone object? I think I have a pretty good example of this. There was a time in our office where some of the seniors, like the leaders, were doing time card fraud, and they were, cutting out here, cutting out there. And then pretty soon we had a whole bunch of people doing it. And when anybody objected, it was like, you were singled out, and, things got really bad for you because you were the only one that was like, well, I don't do that. So, and they were like, oh, goody two shoe. They would tease and ridicule people to the point where, like, a lot of people didn't even want to come to work, and some people did quit. But then now we have this whole IG thing that you can do with like an anonymous tip, so that then the investigators can come in, but you don't actually have to be the one that blows the whistle openly. And that's helped like be able to tip activities like that, where it's just like, this is probably not where we want to go. But it's like a slippery slope that people are finding themselves in. And I think that if you don't have something where people can go, it's not like you can just jump over your boss and say, hey, you tittle tattle on your boss. But you need to create an organization where there's a way to tip, those kind of behaviors to keep people on the, in the right path. But I think if people have, leaders that are making poor decisions because of their own lack of integrity, I think it affects the whole organization. So
I agree.
Yep. So for me, it was kind of along the same lines of that original story I just told, but we had created a sales culture in our company that, again, was the guy who ran sales. His motto was, as we were, we'd had a pipeline of who we're talking to and trying to sell to, and his motto was, for anyone who had to do a demo, say yes to everything. If they ask if our platform can do this, say yes, whether it can or it can't, which we all knew put us in the uncomfortable position of we can't deliver on that. But it was all about, again, the company had been underperforming and they wanted to show that they were closing deals. So again, the strategy was say yes to everything, knowing we couldn't necessarily deliver. So there was people who would object at the time. And under that leadership, it was, if you're objecting, then you're like a roadblock to progress. And basically you could see that you were going to be managed out of the business. So it was pretty toxic.
yeah. And I think in sales and places where there's, people can fudge numbers for either metrics to show their team is doing better than they actually are, or yes, our product can do this. I think that is an easy, slippery slope right there for people to, make bad choices and like, oh yeah, we can totally do that just so that I can earn your business. And then knowing that I may or may not be able to figure it out. But at the time, maybe I could have figured it out, maybe it could have done that. I don't know.
Right.
Like there's a gray area, but I do see this happen a lot with leaders when they're providing metrics. I think that's one of the big ones is, making things sound better than they actually are. So they get the big promotion. And it kind of, for me, when I think about that, I'm like, like if you look at some of the leaders in your organization and you're like, how did you get to your leadership spot? Was it because you were actually very talented and very smart? Or was it that your integrity slipped and you were able to maneuver your way through the ladder? I do kind of look at a lot of our leaders like and evaluate, what kind of leader are they? Are they the one that stepped on a few people, stabbed them in the back to get where they were, or did they actually work hard and earn it? And what made them stand out? Was it a lack of integrity? Or was it that they actually had integrity? And I think there's a very defined line between those types of leadership.
Yep.
So what are some basic principles that guide integrity? And is there a time when there's a gray area, and how do you choose correctly?
So for me, I think everybody has to kind of define what that integrity means to them. For me, there's things like it's really important for me to feel that like I'm being honest in my dealings with people. I'm being very transparent. I always say, even in my job today, I don't do very well at the whole political games of the corporate world. I'm just not good at it because I always want to portray reality. And to me, the success of the business is more important than the success of just my area. Whereas, again, sort of the politics of the corporate world is there's a lot of people you'll see that, it's more important for them to make their, ensure that their area of the business looks like it's running well, whether they're doing that by stepping on other areas of the business and causing them issues or whatever. So that's why for me, it's like, integrity means we're all in this together. I want to build real relationships with people that are built on honesty. So in other words, you can trust that what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do. Those are some of the things.
When I think of those, Brad, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think of just honoring your word, saying what you do is what you're actually going to, what you say you'll do is what you'll actually do. Are there gray areas? I think there are gray areas, and we create those gray areas in our mind. And that's done through justification, where we get to a point where we start to justify things, and then that integrity which we have or had then becomes a gray area, and we just slowly justify what we're doing to the point where we think it's okay. And I think that's really what happened in Lance Armstrong's situation, and we see that happen to a lot of people in real life, is that they start to justify, and that gray area just slowly creeps in, and then they lose focus.
I agree. I think integrity, I feel like when I think of that and when I was taught, is when it comes down to it, after all the facts are sifted and everything's out on the table, will you be in the right, and will you have made a hard choice over an easy choice, and what does that say about you, and I think that's where I always kind of go down to, when all the facts are out, am I doing the right thing, even though it might be easy to do something else? And that kind of, I think, helps sort through that justification of, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean it's right, and doesn't mean that I should be doing it. Like, at the end of the day, when all the facts are laid out on the table and everything's just black and white, where would I stand, and how would those cards lay on the table once everything's out, So I think that helps me to know, because, if, like I said, if everyone's doing it, does it really feel wrong?
But some individuals could, what you think is right and what another individual thinks may not be right to them. And so,
yeah, but when everything's said and done, there's still a story in between there that would set you either in the right or the wrong. And
right.
whether you had all the facts to make the right choice or not, there's still a right or a wrong. So I feel like that's kind of how you got to get down to, what are the facts, and what, will I be right or will I be in the wrong, and will I feel sorry for it and have to apologize, or will someone else have to apologize to me, or
Right.
like, there's always the two sides, and where you stand doesn't really change regardless of the facts when they're all put out on the table. So I don't know. I think in the military, it's always, choose the hard right over the easy wrong. So I've always lived by that. If there's a rule, you should follow it. If we should be doing this, then we should. But if we shouldn't, and we know we shouldn't, then we really shouldn't. And you're really wrong either way. I think that one's a pretty easy one, honestly. And then this next one is, how will you personally measure your life, and how will you measure success? Did anyone read the case study for that?
I read it. I had actually seen that before this this class. So
yeah, me too. The video, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, it's clearly defining what success means to you. And I know he talks about then creating a strategy for your life. But to me, that means once you've defined like what does success really mean? What does that look like? And when you talk about it from a life standpoint, for me, that becomes, again, I have a family. I spend a good chunk of my time as it relates to the world of business, but it's about, success for me is again about, did I build those relationships with my family? Was I a good husband and father? And there are things that go towards making that successful. That's why it's important that, I'm successful in my career to an extent, as long as it doesn't bleed too much into my family life. Because, but there are those things you have to do to say, if I want to be known for my measure of success, I think what's the term you used, something about you got to make sure you have the right yardstick. For me to set those goals and say that's how I want to be measured, then there's different means to how to get there. So ensuring that have those defined, and I feel like I'm babbling on this one, but you set your goals and you set what you want to be, and then you set how you become that, and that's how you measure. You measure it based on, am I becoming what I want to be?
Mm-hmm. I think you're right. I think that defining is key. So I would totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, I think of it as that, I'm not the type of individual that defines my success based on a title other than husband and father and friend. Titles in the corporate world or the business world, they don't mean anything to me, even when I'm greeted, by an individual who expresses that I'm the CFO or the CEO of a bank or whatever it might be. I don't look at him in a greater response because of his title. Because if he's a good individual, he's a good individual, and that's the way that I would measure his success, and I would measure mine the same way.
I like that. For me, when I was reading that article, I just kept thinking the work-life balance, and we talk a lot about that where I work is, our work never ends. It's continuous. It's demanding, it's stressful, it's competitive, and learning how to manage that and how to turn it off and go home and have a life outside of work is actually really hard. And I think for me, when I was reading that, I just kept thinking work-life balance. Like, how do I define my successes at home? How do I define my successes at work? I have opportunity to work, and I'm in my mid-career point. So this is kind of my make it or break it point for me, where I define whether I'm going to move into senior management or if I'm going to stay technical management and stay on the operations side. But when you go into the senior management, it's much more demanding, and the balance is a lot harder to achieve, to maintain those things at home. So for me, like I really have to take things, what is really important. And this past year, my sister has pancreatic cancer. And just last week, I had a really close coworker pass away unexpectedly. So when you really have that facing of like, this could be it, tomorrow could be it, how would I measure my success? Was it everything that I did at work and all the neglect that I did for my family, or is it also what I did for my family and the work that I did to support my family? Like, I have to do one in order to have the other. So I think for me, it's that work-life balance. How do I put those both into a perspective where I can balance both equally and be a good mom and be there for my kids and do everything that I'm supposed to do as a homemaker, and then also be very successful in my work and actually bring home an income that can make my family live a little bit better, and I can actually send my kids to college. So to make their life better.
If you have that figured out, would you let us know?
I certainly do not. I took a lateral move out of my job because I wasn't quite ready to move up in the ladder. So that's been a little stressful, and that was a really hard decision instead of taking a promotion. So my boss, when he found out I took my lateral move, he came to me and he said, "What are you doing? Why would you ever take a lateral move? You just ended your career." And I was like, "Well, I'm not ready to move up because I have big responsibilities at home that I wouldn't be able to balance very well moving up instead of just moving into a lateral spot." So yeah, it's not an easy choice all the time, but I feel it was the right choice for me. I don't feel I regret it. I do see my peers and my friends getting promoted above me, and they're obviously their titles are more impressive. But like you said, is that really how I want to measure my life? I don't think so. So I think I'm in the guy that gave the presentation, and when he looked back at his friends and they were all divorced and their marriages and families were falling apart, and then where he kind of balanced a little bit better, where he's very successful but also understood the roots and the importance of why we're here on earth. So I thought it was a really interesting story. So
Cool.
yeah. Any last thoughts?
No, nothing from me.
I don't have any, but did you say we don't have a meeting next week?
It doesn't seem like we do. Gosh,
Okay.
I don't know. Did you get to the bottom of any of that, Brad?
No, I'll do. Let me see what it says on. I didn't see anything being pulled into this week, but let me see if I can see anything. Well, it does say lesson. Well, wait a minute.
And prep, right? But then when I was looking at the content, it's like we're in lesson 12. It's like he moved lesson 12, now 10.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand what he was trying to relay.
Yeah, so it looks like we're skipping to lesson 12 for next week.
Yeah.
But we do have a case study.
There is no. It doesn't show a group meeting though. It shows to do a case study response. So uploading a paper.
Okay.
And then it shows the reading discussion, which is just the go on the board, but it does not show a team meeting.
Oh, okay. So perfect.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Well, then happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah. You guys have a safe Thanksgiving and enjoy yourselves.
Yes, definitely. You too.
I don't know if this matters. Do you want me to send you the link to post as the group leader, or do you care? I'll just post it.
I don't care. Yeah, just.
I'll just post it then. Okay. All right.
Thank you for setting it up, Brad.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
See you later.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.